What were we talking about last time? It all seemed so serious. We were talking about inner experience, I guess, and music, the effects of music. Whether our inner experience is the same, or is it really quite different from person to person? That's right, something like that's the broad topic. When we're on topic, that's the topic for this season. When we're on topic. Well, is our experience the same? What did we decide? It's hard to say. It's a tricky topic. How so? Well, tricky because we don't have direct access to anyone's experience but our own. How do we check, compare? We can't get into two people's heads and compare their experiences side by side, as it were, the way we would compare, two coins, a toonie and a 50-cent piece, or two sandwiches. Coins and sandwiches, those are great examples. Well, thank you. How do you come up with this stuff? I suppose brain scans could be compared side by side, but I suspect you might say this is not precisely the same as accessing or comparing experience directly. Technically, I suppose it's not, though doubtless it's related. But let's agree that comparing experience is tricky. Eventually, trying to compare the experience of music between persons led to thinking about comparing experience across cultures. Last time you talked at length and incomprehensibly about wavelengths and fundamentals, as I recall. Well, I wouldn't say incomprehensibly. Well, suit yourself. But why not say what you really mean? What was it about culture and perception you were hoping to get across? I guess I only wanted to reject, the extremes. And what are the extremes? Well, first there's the idea that we all perceive music identically, or to put it even more presumptuously, the idea that everyone perceives music just as I do. I reject that extreme. Well, it's hardly an insight. I suppose everyone does. Rejecting the second extreme, though, is more controversial. It's popular and I think presumed to be the enlightened take, namely the idea that our musical perceptions are entirely or near entirely the result of cultural conditioning. That I would also reject. Are you trying to create a stir? No. Well, you seem to be. No, I'm moderate. Remember I wrote an episode called Mushroom Magma, that title. Well, I intended some time ago to talk about the fallacy of bifurcation, and that's how I got the title. I was thinking about an illustration of that particular logical fallacy, an error in thinking. The illustration goes something like this. Your waiter brings your soup over to the table and it's boiling, literally searing and steaming and bubbling over onto the tablecloth. Mushroom magma, that's where that came from. Did I say it was mushroom soup? Anyway, you kindly let him know that it may be a tad on the hot side. Your waiter, also called Tad, immediately fills with dignified indignation and delivers his retort. Perhaps sir would prefer it iced cold. Tad is Parisian, though the accent may not be on point. Well, that's Tad's response. He's falsely implying that you have only two options. The point, though, of this fallacy is not just that there is a third option midway between ice cold and mushroom magma. The point is there's a whole rejected range of sanity. I don't mean to be discourteous, Tad, but take it back and bring it back when it's in the range of sanity. Well, that's how I feel about music. Universal perception as one option, and from scratch cultural indoctrination is the only other. They're both too extreme. You think that they are not the only options, and that the more likely and reasonable truth must lie somewhere in the middle. Thank you for putting it so helpfully. You're very welcome. But on what basis do you think this? Basis? This channel is more of an opinion piece. A long-winded opinion piece joyously uncluttered by research and factual content. Actually, in this case, and I'm as shocked as you that in this case I read an article. That wasn't quite the basis of the opinion, but its conclusions happen to concur roughly with what I would have guessed. It's an old-ish article from 2019 in the Harvard Gazette. It's called Music Everywhere, and a second related article was titled Songs in the Key of Humanity from the year earlier. I won't be exhaustive, but I'll leave a link for those interested. It involved scientists of various kinds and musicologists, and its findings ran, quote, counter to expectations. Briefly, across the globe, participants in a broad study were asked to identify songs across cultures that had been grouped by function. The participants, regardless of where they were from, or where the songs were from, were pretty reliably able to identify which songs were used, again by function, for dancing or for soothing a baby, healing illness, etc. Counter to expectations, I assume, because inaccessible in cultured listening or something like it, and not universal perception, is meant to be the enlightened take. But that's how it came out. You did research. I know. But why do you say you would have expected that outcome? Well, to tell the truth, I saw Ricky Gervais on Sesame Street once. Sure, that makes good sense. Let me finish. His bit was a lullaby. He's singing to Elmo to help him sleep, and the gag is that he sings and plays softly for the verse. Then just as Elmo begins to doze, the song picks up in the chorus, and he sings absurdly loud. I think it alternates like that. Well, to me, what kind of shock can it be to culturally enlightened humanity that lullabies across the world are sung at reasonably low volumes, or that when they are rhythmic, they're slow and soothing rather than galloping towards the finish line like horses winning a Kentucky Derby? Well, I knew the well-researched opinions would dry up at some point. I guess I just didn't expect it to happen so abruptly. You still watch Sesame Street? My point, okay, from the last episode, was that what argues for universal perception is a whole collection of objective facts, our in common human senses, the in common objective structure of our human brains. And, of course, the in common music itself under consideration. If we're talking about whether a tritone is, universally dissonant, there are facts about how the two notes in the interval in a tritone relate. Acoustic facts, objective facts that hold across cultures. It may not have helped, but I tried to point out that these could be termed cross-cultural facts. On the other side, I concede. Our cultural context must modify in many ways, perhaps even dramatically, our perceptions. But my point in the episode was not extreme. It wasn't that cultural content doesn't modify perception, but that there's this outstanding question of extent. I tried to ask, how differently at Maxima might an objective input be perceived based on different cultural conditioning? If we're imagining that really any input can be assigned to any experienced effect, it seems an overclaim. We're really saying that inner perception is completely untethered from what we're listening to, or at best that it can just point to what we assign. Take, for example, the sharp 4, the Lydian, used to achieve very particular effects in Western film scores. But under alternate cultural conditioning, could, the flat 6 minor, the Aeolian sound, achieve what I now think of as the Lydian effect, the lift or wonder or whatever it might be called? Could each, under sufficient hypothetical conditioning, elicit the effect of the other, a swap? Is there any constrained relation between the objective input and the felt effect, if you see what I mean? Any clearer? Maybe. Possibly even comprehensibly so. Mushroom magma. Yes, mushroom magma, and iced cold in a bad Parisian accent. And me right here, somewhere in the middle. It's an opinion. It's an opinion piece. Peppered occasionally by minimal dated research. Well, peppered really just the one time. More like one very small peppercorn. Confusable possibly with a piece of dirt that's fallen in your food. Is that a question? Occasionally I just observe.